Stockton, California, the 11th largest city in California, the 58th largest city in the nation. Still, it doesn't jump out when you say the name. This gold rush town was the first city in California that was named without using Native American or Mexican language, and it's home to the deepest inland port on the West Coast. Stockton is not a large city like Sacramento and San Francisco, and it's also not a small city like the communities that surround it. Despite regularly appearing in the national rankings for high crime rates, foreclosure, and illiterate citizens, Stockton has managed to attract more than its fair share of ultra-rich visitors and inhabitants. The Groupie family, the Spanos family, Don Shalvey, Vice President Kamala Harris, and even Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg are a few of the ultra-rich who have found it in their hearts to donate time, money, and attention to our city. But you have to wonder why. In return for their investments, we've seen higher crime rates, the systematic destruction of our public school system, and higher taxes, not to mention the fact that our local newspaper, the Stockton Record, is a propaganda machine for anyone who is liberal with their money. With all this going on, you might wonder what can be done, or it doesn't matter what they've done, they're ultra rich. But in reality, they're just people. And the things that have been going on in Stockton, California are happening all over the nation, under the noses of parents, families, and good citizens everywhere. You may be asking, why is he telling me all this? When I'm done, the people, groups, and organizations that have contributed to destroying my hometown and this nation won't be able to hide behind a smile anymore. They won't be able to offer a check to right a wrong. Heck, when I'm finished, I'm sure you won't appreciate them walking the street. The good news is you've known all along, and you've been right about these business owners, unions, and politicians. They're all bought and sold. My hope is that when I'm done, you'll be able to spot them and their works a mile away. When I'm done, you'll know the truth, beyond a shadow of a doubt. We start our series outside of Stockton, a short ways away in San Francisco, California. There, a mayor named Willie L. Brown Jr. rose from humble beginnings in Texas to become the most powerful assembly member in the history of politics, while at the same time fashioning a political machine that eventually allowed him to connect to Stockton, California, and to connect Stockton to the highest office in America, and to his hand-picked protege, Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Over the weekend, former California Assembly Speaker of the House and former Mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, also shared his thoughts by revealing in a column that he writes that he mentored and once dated Kamala Harris at the beginning of her political career. For her, why was she dating this married man? Why is he taking credit for her career by saying that I supported her career? How would you respond to that?
Well, I did support her career, and I was married, but I have been separated before meeting her.
I would assume that there are other people whose career you also influenced over the years.
Well, all I can suggest to you is you call the governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom, and say, who started your career? He will say, Willie Brown.
Willie Brown has been accused of many things in the political arena, but lying about his investments into people is not one of them. His support of key political figures in California, from John Burton and Nancy Pelosi to the trio of California governors Gavin Newsom, Jerry Brown, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, show that Brown's influence knows no limit.
You talk to Dianne Feinstein, and she will say, in 1969, when I first ran for the Board of Supervisors, no other elected official supported my candidacy except one, Willie Brown. You call Governor Jerry Brown, who was governor for 16 years, and you ask him specifically, what elected official endorsed and supported your candidacy single-handedly when no other elected official did when you ran for Secretary of State? He would say, Willie Brown. You call Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Republican person who won the governorship. And you ask who among the Democrats supported your candidacy, he will say there was one person that made the difference in my candidacy. I went from being a Republican who could get maybe 12 to 15% of the African American vote to getting 30% of the African American vote against an incumbent member of the Treasurer's Office of California, and it was Willie Brown who did all of that.
He is making the headlines again because photos resurfaced of an old flame that she used to date, and it's Montel Williams.
No. She dated Montel Williams?
Yes,
The talk show host?
Williams, the talk show host.
I know that her and Doug have probably talked about this, but like because it's so big on the internet right now, you think he like asked her like a couple more questions about it. It's just like, well, now since it's brought back up.
If Vice President Kamala Harris was his girlfriend, how much support did he lend and how effective was it in her cause to become Vice President of the United States? And while we're at it, let's take a look at another close friend of Willie Brown's, Dr. Alice Huffman, former NAACP president for the state of California and Hawaii region for over 30 years, political consultant, and former lobbyist for the California Teachers Association.
Alice was going to be your guest, and I wondered why the call. Alice does not like to share the podium. This is called She Shares. Well, that is not descriptive of Alice in public service. I've known Alice, as Donna says, for years and years and years and years. I knew Alice before she was in government. I knew Alice when she was in government. I knew Alice when she left government. In each of those stations that Alice has occupied, there has always been a dramatic change and an elevation of the position that she abandoned. Servant in the true sense of the word, and in every sense of the word. And as I said, the NAACP for the whole Western region has been unusually blessed. And the Democratic Party has been blessed. Believe me, 4 years ago, when Barack Obama was seeking re-election, the woman heading that convention and organizing it in North Carolina was Alice. You can find Alice surfacing almost every place. And if Hillary was really on her job, she would, at the next debate, be about declining to meet Trump and let Alice have at it. Trump would withdraw halfway through the debate, and we would not be plagued with his prospects for the presidency because Alice would have vanquished him as she has vanquished so many other really bad people.
Earlier this fall, we told you about a political consultant named Alice Huffman. And during this past election cycle, she was paid $1.7 million to work on campaigns for several statewide ballot measures. But many folks saw this as a conflict of interest, seeing as Alice Huffman also served as head of the California chapter of the NAACP. Well, earlier this week, Huffman resigned from that post for health reasons. For more on this, we go now to journalist Laurel Rosenhall of Cal Matters. Laurel, it's great to have you back with us again.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So let's start off with a quick recap in case folks didn't catch our previous conversation on this or don't recall. There's a lot going on in the world. But basically, Alice Huffman ran this political consulting firm, made a whole lot of money, and offered her opinion. We saw it in ballot guides. You know, Alice Huffman, president of the NAACP, said yes or no on a couple of really important propositions. Remind us where she stood on some of these ballot measures.
Yeah, people may have seen her in the ads that were against the split roll ballot measure. That was the property tax increase for commercial property taxes. She was very vocal on that one, no on Prop 15. She was also involved in the cash bail initiative, which was basically overturning California's ban on cash bail. In other words, not allowing the state to move forward with a ban on cash bail. Black leaders around California felt that she and the NAACP were taking positions that were not in the best interest of African American communities.
For more than 100 years, the Black community has looked to the NAACP as the gold standard of approval for the promotion and betterment of Black people. Sadly, we've seen the NAACP California-Hawaii chapter lose its moral compass, as evidenced by its most recent endorsements, including its opposition to pro-Black initiatives like Prop 15, 17, and 21. To be clear, this isn't about one person or institution, as these types of payout to sellout have been happening for far too long.
So, Laurel, walk us through what happened next. A lot of resistance, especially from the African American community, to the stances that Alice Huffman was taking. What happened next?
Well, there were local branches of the NAACP that were just in disagreement, including one in Santa Monica that was, overtly advocating for voters to not listen to the NAACP endorsements. There was a chapter in Oakland. There was a leader in San Jose. So there were many NAACP local branches that were in disagreement with the state chapter. And some of them were contacting the national office, asking for some more information, some interventions. The national NAACP never would do an interview with me. So unfortunately, I cannot represent their position. But they did come out before the election with a bunch of policy statements. And while they didn't take positions on specific endorsements, they actually did come out with a statement saying that they support ending the use of cash bail and that they encourage cities and states to stop the use of cash bail. So that was a pretty unusual and marked contrast between what the California chapter of the NAACP was advocating and the national.
Yeah, and then Alice Huffman sends this letter saying that as of the 1st of December, just yesterday, she was no longer going to be president of this Western chapter of the NAACP. What did she say in that letter?
She said she was stepping down for health reasons and that she had had a long and successful career, including a very successful election season. She was happy to have helped elect a Democratic president and the first Black vice president. So she was focusing on that. And, she's had a very long career. She has been in politics for a good 50 years or more. She has, it's not surprising that she would retire.
And what's happening in America under Donald Trump is a tragedy for working people, particularly African Americans. And I don't want any of you to think that I don't respect the presidency. I do. But there are leaders sometimes who come along, like Hitler and others, that need to be called out.
Alice, while effective, has been described by her own constituents as self-serving and not for the best interests of the greater African American community for her roles in accepting over $1 million in the 2020 election cycles alone to promote support for propositions that are widely known to negatively and disproportionately affect her community. These headlines pale in comparison to the draconian way that Dr. Huffman led the California-Hawaii region for the last 30 years. Though her ouster from the presidency did not prevent her from reaping the benefits of her many years of dutiful service, as she was placed alongside good friend Willie Brown and their mentee, the youngest Black mayor of Stockton, California, Michael Tubbs, to a team as Black leaders of California. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was making sure to support Mayor Tubbs by coming to Stockton herself on her way up the ladder to the Oval Office. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
We have so many jewels in California, and one of them is Michael Tubbs. I've been watching him and talking with him for quite some time. He said, please, you've got to come to Stockton.
I had all kinds of scams.
I'm hoping that you might begin to see the pattern I saw It somehow all starts with Willie Brown and a former committee of the California Democratic Party named John Lowell Burton.
John Burton, who ultimately became a congressman, a member of the state assembly, the president of the state senate, they were all my guys. As a matter of fact, the drill team in the Air Force ROTC was by alphabet in terms of where you stood. So it was Brown and Burton. And we were elbows. That's how we met. That's how we met. And we became fast friends. We enrolled in the Young Democrats together. So on the outside of college, I was a participant in the political process. I worked in the campaigns of people running for public office. So all of that was natural. So when I went down with Benny Travis and heard how you get into law school, it clearly said to me, I want this deal because I can keep on doing what I was doing in college, and I can do it easily. That's how I enrolled in Hastings College of Law.
In reality, the scams, Willie Brown and his connections were nothing more but opportunities to ravage the wealth of the local communities and the talent that we bring.
The future, Michael Tubbs wins Stockton's mayoral race in a landslide, and the 26-year-old becomes one of the youngest mayors in the country. Now the big question for him is what's next for the city of Stockton, and how is he feeling today?
I had all kinds of scams.
On our next episode of Without a Shadow of a Doubt, we're going to talk about the political incest that is the unholy matrimony. Willie Brown and his connections to Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom affect Stockton, Alice Huffman, and her direct connections to Mudville.